Sam Lotu-Iiga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I take this opportunity first to say talofa lava in Samoan. It is Samoan Language Week, and it's a especially significant week this week because it is also the 50th Jubilee celebrations of Samoan independence. So talofa lava to you and to our listeners at home and all the viewers around the country. And I'm actually honoured to speak on this bill, and I want to bring the discussion back to the Commerce Commission International Cooperation and Fees Bill. And it's an important bill because, sir, this bill is consistent with the budget that we've heard tonight being debated. It's consistent with the goals of a government that is looking to put this country back on track to recovery. And after 9 long years of the Labor government, the long 9 years of a Labor government, where the last 5 years of that government saw exports contract, sir, this bill directly impacts the ability of our firms and our companies and organisations in this country to operate effectively in its trading markets, and in particular, sir, the Australian market. And the proposals in this bill are part of the single economic market reforms. And it started with the John Key government in 2009, when he led a mission to Australia, alongside other ministers in commerce portfolios, where they got around the table and they said, how can we make our countries prosperous? How can we work together to develop a single economic market to allow both countries to prosper? And the bill enables greater cooperation between our regulatory body, and I acknowledge the Minister and the Chair, the Honourable Craig Foss, who's the Minister responsible for the Commerce Commission, and the fine work that he does as our Commerce Minister, following on, of course, from the Honourable Simon Power, who was the Minister in charge of bringing this bill together, along with the Honourable Leanne Dalzell. And what it is, it's part of improving our export markets. And we know that this government's plan to open access to export markets is part of the recovery process. And, sir, it's about building a more productive and competitive economy. So what do? It's about our firms operating overseas. And, sir, it will allow the Commerce Commission to work effectively with the ACCC, or the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, and other regulators to look at unfair trading practices as well as other anti-competitive behaviours. So the cooperation between the regulators will involve some degree of information sharing. And this government is actually focused on information sharing to provide efficiencies in government. We saw that with the Welfare Reform Bill, sir, which allows for information sharing between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Social Development. We've seen it with the Information Sharing Bill, which I understand is being worked on in the Justice and Electoral Select Committee. And by sharing information, sir, they are able to more effectively monitor those companies that exhibit anti-competitive behaviour, monopolistic behaviour, as well as unfair trading practices. So what is it about? Well, yesterday, sir, I visited one of my businesses in my electorate. And I just want to, for the member opposite who continues to say that Maunga Keke is in South Auckland, it's not. It's the heart of Auckland, it's the centre of Auckland, it's the heart of manufacturing, not just in Auckland but around this country, where companies like Raycon, Coca-Cola, Buckley Systems, big companies that actually provide jobs and opportunities, not just for my local people, but people across Auckland. So it is not in South Auckland, it is in the isthmus of Auckland between Onehunga and Panmure. And what's our ambition? Our ambition is to remove the barriers to trade. And removing the anti-competitive practices allows those firms that want to operate in foreign markets to have an equal footing. And when we heard the 7 submissions that came to Select Committee, we were concerned as a committee that this information sharing would allow for quite confidential and privileged information to be to be shared not just across borders but to, Mr Chair, thank you Mr Chair, but also to non-government organisations. They may be regulators but they're not government organisations. And we were concerned that that would be the case, but we were reassured by officials that the regulator-to-regulator exchange of information there would also be provisions to work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in both countries and work with government organisations in order to facilitate the effective and efficient exchange of that information. And so that enhanced cooperation is about detecting and successfully penalising overseas-based parties who contravene this Act and other provisions of our commerce legislation. So why is it important? Well, it is important because it promotes fair trade in domestic markets as well as our foreign export markets. It's also about promoting competition in our local markets. And as I said, when I visited this business yesterday, Baxter Healthcare, that was operating in both markets, that had plants and pharmacies in both countries, that had distribution networks in both countries. Part of their concern was to say, look, we want a regulatory framework that is consistent between the countries, that we understand that when we trade and that when we produce and manufacture our goods, that we have a level playing field, a consistent playing field, not just between Australia and New Zealand, but this bill also affects other foreign jurisdictions. So we heard those concerns about regulator-to-regulator exchange of information. We were reassured by the officials, and I'm confident that this bill will actually promote effective and efficient markets. Sir, it's a bill that certainly had cross-party support during the Select Committee process. It's a bill that I believe continues to have that cross-party support, and it's in the best interest of our international trading relationships, especially with our biggest trading partner in Australia, that we have these single economic markets, that we have consistent law between the two. But sir, may I just add my own word of caution to this debate and the discussion that we have had here tonight. It's certainly my view that we just don't adopt Australian legislation in toto and that we kowtow, I suppose, to Australian legislators. I think we're a sovereign nation and we also need to continue to develop our own law independent to that of our trading partners. But sir, when I looked at this bill and I considered this bill in length with my colleagues in the Commerce Select Committee, I believe that the bill is in the best interests of our country and certainly in the best interests of my local manufacturers and those that trade with foreign countries, and I certainly commend this bill to the House. Thank you, sir.
The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr Chairman, like many of my colleagues, I wasn't